Okay, it's Friday. It's time for myNewsWrap. Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of myNewsWrap. News from the SAP and Microsoft ecosystem. Although it's Friday the 13th, I do not have any scary news that I want to present you. However, I have some news this week, especially from the SAP area. From the Microsoft area, pardon me. SAP is a bit quiet at the moment. I guess it's because they are prepping for TechEd. So let's jump into the news. Let's start with SAP. A bit of general stuff. There was one event that took place yesterday, which was a short conversation of 1 hour between Christian Klein and the CEO of the American SAP user group, ASAC. That took place yesterday evening. And before that event started, Dan from the Genomica brought up some points that would be of interest for the audience. So there are 16 questions that he brought up that are something that should be answered in order to satisfy the US audience from his perspective. I attended the session and, well, to make a long story short, he didn't answer them. So if you saw the DSAG keynote by Christian Klein, it was basically the same message. There was also no big difference to the Q3 earning report, where he also had a part to say and answered several questions. So it was the same storyline. However, one thing surprised me, because this was now the first time that Christian Klein did not reduce or restrict the influence of cloud providers to being there in order to serve as infrastructure as a service. But this time, within this interview or within this conversation in the ASAC, he said, okay, the hyperscalers, the cloud providers, they are there for providing infrastructure, of course, that's fine, but they're also there to provide some services that we will not provide. So he now moved up the stack and recognized, finally, from my perspective, that there are services within AWS, within Azure, within GCP that SAP will not provide, and they are on application level, and you should incorporate them within your application in order to add value. That's something that I was highly appreciated. That was basically the highlight for me of this 1 hour conversation. So that's already it from the general perspective around SAP. As I said in the beginning, there isn't too much traffic at the moment in the SAP area. I guess that's because it's only now less than a month until SAP TechEd. So I think they will keep the gates a bit closed in order to have some announcements at TechEd, where I will say something later about the TechEd thingy. Then the Devtoberfest is now in its, let's say, final rounds. So we have now all the contributions, the top 5 contributions, and you can now vote for them. I've referenced the blog within the GitHub repo as usual, and the voting is done via Q&A, so via answers that you can upvote within the SAP community. There are now 5 contributions top 5 contributions for this Devtober finalist team. 2 of them are with respect to the cloud application programming model, especially with respect to the Postgres SQL adapter that Gregor Wolf and Mobo, I can't remember his name at the moment, are pushing, and there is the Delta deployment and migrations adapter for CAP databases. So 2 contributions from the Cloud Application Programming Model area. And then, of course, we have ABAP Git in there, which is no real surprise, and 2 further contributions with respect to VS Code and to ABAP development utilities. And what's quite funny from my perspective is that even an SAP employee brought up an additional, opinion, and he said the Postgres adapter would really be of value also for SAP internally. So that's something that, kind of is interesting, because up to now SAP did not provide any official support for this Postgres SQL thingy. Now let's see how things evolve. Then there was another contribution by the SAP Developer Advocates by Marius Obert, who brought up, from my perspective, quite nice new format, or not new, but a format that I have not seen within the developer space. So it's a very short and crisp video on YouTube. It's around 10 minutes, focusing on one topic. And depending on the feedback on this video, Marius, said that he will do more on that. And the content of the video is quite interesting. It's about using Postman for API testing with the XSUAA, so with the user authentication and authorization within Cloud Foundry. That's a bit of a beast to get the tokens and the chat tokens right. So I think that's quite helpful. There was also some discussion on Twitter on that topic, because it seems that within SAP internally, they have a CLI for that. At least some team implemented that. So it would be really interesting to push that to the public. Now let's see, nevertheless, if you are around that area with XSUAA and you want to do API testing, then I think this video is of value for you. Then I have another contribution from the Kyma space. It's not brand new, it's indeed quite old. But I stumbled across that last week, and that's also from the Q&A section, and that's an interesting topic. If you're playing around with Kyma on the trial area, and you create namespaces and play around within the namespaces and want to delete them at a later point in time, then maybe you have a problem with terminating the namespace, depending if you removed all the stuff within the within the namespace. So, and here is some guidance by Jamie on how to terminate the namespace using the command line interface kubectl. So that might come quite handy if you run into the problem. Okay, so that's already it from the SAP area. So no real news on the Cloud Application Programming Model, no real news from the Kyma space. I guess it's tech time. However, on the other side of the house, in the Microsoft area, there is a lot of news, basically because there are several conferences running at the moment. And that's why several things go general available. Now let's start with the most important stuff, Azure Functions, from my perspective. Azure Functions now supports Node.js 14 in a preview version. So for those of you who are working with Azure Functions or are not working that long with Azure Functions, when it comes to support of Node versions, Azure Functions support the last 2 long-term support versions of Node. And now 14 is out. 14 is a long-term support version, so it's now being rolled into the Azure space. And you can now use it as a preview, so it's not officially supported right now. But if you want to try it out, if you want to use Node.js 14, it's now in principle possible on the Node.js, on the Azure Functions Node.js stack. Then there is a little post on a thing that I mentioned 2 weeks before. That's the Azure Functions retry policy that is officially available. And there's a little post that describes a little hand-on in combination with Cosmos DB. So the guy, I guess, who wrote the Tatsuro Shibamura, tried out the retry policy and coupled the Azure function to a Cosmos DB trigger. And yeah, if you want to take a look at that, it's quite interesting read. Then another topic that's important when you use durable functions in a productive environment, especially because if you have worked with durable functions, if you have taken a look at the examples of durable functions, you will have seen that for example, the activities are referenced by the name as a string. And that's kind of a magic number or a magic string within the code. And this block gives a little bit of workaround. It's a way to solve that issue in the C# area to get rid of these literals within the code. Because if you change the name of the activity function, there will be no check that the orchestrator within durable function also has a corrected version of the name if you use literals, of course. So this is a way to put in the safety net here, making use of the name of operator in C#. Okay, then we have a video also on YouTube from the dev show, from the 4devs community, where Mark Duker, one of the MVPs of Microsoft, gives a 1-hour overview of how to deal with persistence in serverless applications. So especially, of course, he's one of the Azure Functions rock stars, especially in conjunction with Azure Functions. So he talks about blob storage, he talks about table storage, he talks about Cosmos DB, and he talks about durable entities, which is kind of a special type of persistence when it comes to Azure Functions. Another topic that I have, I think, announced also a few weeks ago concerning a release candidate. Now, KEDA 2.0 is available in release 2.0 and it's generally available. So you can use that now in version 2.0. There have been several improvements in there in order to use it for the horizontal pod autoscaling within a Kubernetes cluster if you run your Azure Functions within Kubernetes. So if you're in that area, 2.0 is out. Then I have some further announcements, more general nature. So as you might have seen, the .NET Conf is currently running. So, and as usual, when there's a conference and there is something in the making, this in the making will be a general available after the conference, and that's the case for .NET 5.0. So .NET 5.0 is now general available, which means C# is now available in version 9, F# is available in version 5. And what's important to note is .NET 5.0 is the new unified version of .NET. So if you are around that ecosystem, you had the let's say, classical .NET release string, and you had .NET Core, which was a cross-platform .NET release. And the last .NET Core release was 3.1. And now those two streams join again together. And now it's only one .NET, and that's the .NET 5.0. So it's the first release of the, let's say, unification of both streams. And it's now officially available. So if you're in that area, give it a go. I think it's not rolled out to all Azure offerings. For example, I think it's not yet supported by Azure Functions, for example. So if you're doing Azure Functions with C#, you can, to the best of my knowledge, not yet switch to .NET 5. But I think that will change within the next month. Then I have two more contributions, or one contributions and one question. One contribution is from the DevOps team of Microsoft Azure. There is at the moment two-part blog post about visual testing in CI/CD pipelines, making use of Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. So what to take into account, what to take care about, where are some pitfalls that you should not fall into. And yeah, if you're in that area, I think that's definitely worth reading. It's quite some coding examples in there, and it's straight from the source of DevOps know-how in the area of Azure. And then there is one second thing that's now especially valuable for those who do not listen to me via the podcast but watch it. There is some tweeting going on around February 2021 in the area of DevOps, in the area of Microsoft DevOps. Something is coming, something cool is gonna happen. It's always depicted with a PowerShell with a submarine. I have absolutely no idea. So if you have any idea what's coming or any hint, I'm happy to see that within the comments below the video. What you think is going on there, because it's 3 months away and they already do quite some teasing in that area. Okay, and that was it from the area of pure Microsoft news that I think is really relevant. So curated and opinionated. Let's switch to the universe between SAP and Microsoft. And there I have quite some news. So last week I kind of complained that there is not too much news. Now, today I have quite some news in that area, and I'm happy about that. So let's start with the Power Platform. There is one blog post that I stumbled across via Roman Broich from Microsoft that highlights the additional value that can come when you combine Power Platform with SAP. It's not a technological deep dive. It's more about how to combine them in a clever way. So, for example, Power Automate and Power Apps. What connections are there, like robotic process automation, like ERP connectors from flows, like custom connectors, and how to combine that stuff with the SAP system. So it's more like an overview, giving you an idea of what you can do. But I think that's really valuable. So and shows the big value that the Power Platform, this local platform of Microsoft, can give you when you combine it with SAP. So that's one point. Then there are several more blog posts around there in the area of combining SAP with Microsoft. One of my favorite folks from that area, Martin Pankratz, another super high quality contribution. To be frank, I would really love to see more of those contributions within the SAP community, because it's really super high quality. And he dives into his special expertise area, cloud platform integration, where he combines cloud platform integration and the monitoring of cloud platform integration with the SAP Cloud Platform Alert Notification Service and Azure Monitor. And this is quite an extensive read. So it's an estimated 30 minutes read. It's really highlighting the scenario, where to use what and why. So again, we have logic apps as a glue between SAP Cloud Platform and Azure. And it's an extensive blog post, what to do, what to use, why to use something, and so on and so forth. There is also at the end of the blog post, there are several references to the GitHub repositories of this for this example, with respect to the iFlow, with respect to the Azure Monitor workbook, and with respect to the setup guide for the SAP Cloud Platform Alert Notification Service. So they are, I think, all pointing towards blogs or to the GitHub repo of Martin. So yeah, if you are in that area, definitely worth a look. And another example of adding value with combining both worlds. So that's really great to see. Then there is another nice example from my perspective that brings both worlds together by Murali, who is also doing quite some blog posts around the area of SAP and Microsoft integration, this time in the area of IoT, combining the IoT offering on Microsoft Azure with the analytic capabilities of SAP Cloud Platform, namely HANA Cloud and Analytics Cloud. And from the Microsoft part of the house, the IoT Hub, of course, when it's IoT, it's basically IoT Hub, and Azure Functions in order to combine both worlds. And that's also nice read and a great example of how you can bring together both worlds without cannibalizing one or the other world and adding value, because that's from my perspective what it's all about. And then there's also another short blog post on LinkedIn about Azure Logic apps and how to quickly set up SAP Action URIs within Logic apps when you call transactional RFCs or RFCs. So yeah, quite helpful from my perspective, worth a read. And then we have another contribution that's now not typically what is part of my area where I'm really interested in, but this is looking a bit behind the things that I usually do. It's auto-scaling of the SAP application server in Azure, and this blog post describes how this is done with respect to monitoring the SAP system and aggregating the information into a log table within Azure, and then reacting based on custom metrics, and then scaling out, but also scaling in the application servers of the SAP system. So that's really interesting. So I'm not an expert in that area, but definitely an interesting read, how you can also make your operations life easier. Good. As I said, quite some news from the world between SAP and Microsoft, quite some news there. So let's switch to the area of education conferences. And after last week's rant about things I would like to say something, but I could not say something, here we go with SAP TechEd. It's officially open now, so you can sign up now. The sessions are available. I have to say the scheduling of the sessions is a quite smooth experience. So it really supports you in adding sessions and also shows you if you have overlaps already when you see the sessions. So that gives you already a hint. And there is another nice feature. If you go to your sessions, to your overview, to your calendar, you will see, let's see if we can highlight that. You will see your calendar, and you might see some, no, I cannot highlight that because universal ID is pain in the ass from my perspective. Nevertheless, you see your calendar and you see the entries in there that you have already, and maybe you have some time in between. Now, if you click into your calendar, into that empty area, a pop-up goes up and shows you the sessions that would take place in this time frame. So you do not have to check yourself what sessions are in there by clever filtering of the sessions, but you just have to go to your calendar and check what's available there in between, and you can that way fill your gaps. However, there's one thing that Tobias Hoffmann made me aware of, and I checked that, and it's currently it's 440 sessions. That's quite a lot. That's cool for 2 days. But the announcement was around more than 500 sessions. That's also announced in the overview video that's available on Subtacket page. So as Subtacket is away one month, I'm questioning myself if this is the final amount of sessions that's there. So it will stay with 440, or if there are some sessions missing that will be filled up until SAP TechEd. Because usually you do not really, if you make your schedule, you do not look that often. And if there are sessions coming up after that, you might miss some sessions. So yeah, let's see if 440 stays or if there are some sessions missing up to this moment and will be filled up later. Or maybe SAP was too optimistic and they didn't gather 500 sessions, so everything's possible. Nevertheless, it's free. Signing up with respect to if you have your universal ID somewhere is okay. The scheduling of the sessions is great, and I think there is quite some stuff that you can watch. I think everybody can find sessions that he or she is interested in. Okay, that's about SAP TechEd. There are no other conferences that cross my way that are currently running and that would be of real deep interest for me at least. So let's switch to the last section, to the productivity area. There is one thing that I already mentioned some months ago, renaming of your GitHub master branch to main. You know the discussion about master and main probably with respect to the wording. And this is a quite decent step-by-step guide how to get from your master branch to your main branch, delete your master branch without losing anything, because as the author of this blog post says, not everybody is gifted with Git CLI superpowers that will help you in that area. So if you have that in front, and I also have that in front of me for quite some repos that I have on GitHub, that's quite useful. And then last but not least, I want to share one announcement that also came along with the announcement of .NET 5. It's the announcement of PowerShell 7.1. There are 2 points that are worth to mention beside the announcement of PowerShell 7.1 that's available since 2 days. Point 1, it's now available in the Windows Store. So you do not have to download it or fetch it somewhere from the GitHub repo. You can now install it from Windows Store, which also means you can update it from Windows Store. That's quite decent. And PowerShell 7.1, of course, it's cross-platform. That's how it always was. It now also follows the same support timeline as .NET 5. So that's also quite important for, I think, enterprise usage of PowerShell. Okay, so that's it. That was all the news that I gathered this week. I hope some points were interesting for you. If you have any proposals, any ideas about news that you would like to see, just leave an issue in my GitHub repository. You can do that. There are all the links. Happy to receive some input there. And yeah, that was it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next Friday, we have episode 12, next edition, next session, next news time. Until then, I wish you a nice Friday, a nice week. Bye.